Hey, this is Dan from Bastille and you're listening to Laura Whitmore on BBC 5 Live.
After 10:30, we're going under the spotlight with Bastille frontman Dan Smith. Now, I ask all my guests about the lyric they live for, which is a line in a song that means a lot to them. And this is Dan's.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 99.
I was thinking, I heard on the radio, a couple of weeks ago, I heard that Baz Luhrmann's song. It's like one massive mantra of looking after yourself and being a good person. But so it's hard to pick. But maybe just to represent that, I should just pick the wear sunscreen, because it's probably just a good life lesson.
Wear sunscreen.
As an Irish person, I need to wear sunscreen.
I've got Celtic parents, and I literally the second I walk outside, I'm sunburned, even in the winter. So it's probably a lesson to live by.
That was Everyone's Free to Wear Sunscreen by Baz Luhrmann, and the lyric Dan from Bastille lives for. A great choice. We'll be hearing more from the singer, songwriter and producer in my full-length Under the Spotlight interview coming up on the other side of the latest BBC News and Sport. It's time we went under the spotlight. And this week I chat to the frontman and songwriter behind one of the most successful bands of the past decade. They've got quite a CV, 2 UK #1 albums, top 10 records in America, close to 10 million sales worldwide, and their mega hit Pompeii is one of the most streamed songs ever in the UK. This week, Bastille released their brand new documentary ReOrchestrated on Amazon Prime, which follows their efforts to put a full orchestra behind some of their tracks for a very special series of gigs, dating back to when we could go to gigs. It's time for Bastille's Dan Smith to go under the spotlight. Dan, welcome to Under the Spotlight. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, all things considered, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Not too bad. I feel like there was a time when I'd see you lots because of gigging and festivals, and it's been a while, and I realised it's been a while probably because there have been no festivals.
I know. It's so weird, isn't it? It's obviously not just in music and the world of entertainment and stuff, but just all the things that you took for granted and did all the time, and all going to the pub and seeing anyone ever leaving the house, going on holiday, anything. It's all just it's strange. I think we're all kind of in our own ways getting used to whatever normality is at the moment, but then there'll be something, it could be hourly, it could be daily, that like a picture that you see or something you watch or read or listen to that flashes you back to what life used to be like and reminds you how weird this is.
Well, speaking of that, because first of all, I want to say congratulations, and we're going to talk about the film ReOrchestrated, but watching that, and there's different elements in it I want to talk about a little bit later on, but watching clips of you guys, doing the big gigs and seeing the crowds, it feels a bit weird.
I know. I thought that. So in watching different versions of the film as it kind of progressed, the first thing, because I guess we saw the first cut together towards the end of last year, or maybe a bit earlier in late summer when life opened up a little bit. We went to a screening room in Soho and all sat at far ends of it from each other with masks on, couldn't even really say hi to each other. It in itself was strange, but at the time felt like such a novelty. And watching it back, having lived through lockdown and not really doing anything for months and months and months, just seeing crowds of people felt so wrong, and seeing us on stage and us kind of in close proximity to the orchestras, and I was like, stop breathing on each other, everyone, you'll give each other COVID. And I think we all have that, watching TV, watching films at the moment, which is pretty much all anyone does. You can't help but think that whenever you see people getting too close, and that's kind of sad. I hope when whatever normality looks like on the other side of this, I hope that we can unlearn that kind of ingrained suspicion of being anywhere near each other that we all seem to have now.
I hope so too. Let's talk about that film, because you have been busy during lockdown, and congratulations, because it really is eye-opening. It's very raw. Tell me about how this film came about.
Yeah, we'd done this ReOrchestrated thing, and it grew. And, early last year, one of the last things we got to do was a show at the Palladium. But before that, a show in Hamburg at this huge, almost like science fiction, futuristic classical concert hall with a 50-piece orchestra and this 15-piece choir. And these gigs were just for us as an indie band that started out, you know, crashing on floors and driving around the country in a car with our gear piled up on ourselves, you know, who really kind of like grafted from like tiny rubbish little pubs through to the places we've been lucky enough to play. To go from that to then being in this classical context with all these amazing, like classically trained musicians, it was such a, I don't know, I guess it really kind of hammered home any imposter syndrome that we might feel, and just how lucky we are. And they felt really special, the gigs. I feel like in them, us, our band, our music, like we're like the vessel for all these other incredibly talented people to kind of hopefully shine. So yeah, it felt worth celebrating, and there's some filmmakers who wanted to kind of use that to talk about creativity and talk about kind of anxiety and imposter syndrome and you know what it takes to work in music, and you know the really weird, different, but often sometimes quite similar paths that so many artists and bands have. And I obviously felt like massively unworthy of a documentary about us, but I felt so proud and excited by the project that the opportunity to show off these other musicians and these other singers and these shows that we got to do that I still can't quite believe were real. Like, it felt kind of worth it. And so we just put a lot of faith and trust in Tom, our friend who filmed everything, and Toby, who co-directed it with Tom. We basically let them take the reins and thought it will be more interesting from the perspective of someone that doesn't really know or care about our band.
No, but like, you know, all big bands at some stage will do a music documentary, and this does feel very different. And one thing which I pick up on that you say a lot, which is in the documentary, and I'm actually really surprised how much it comes up on this radio show when I interview people, is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
From people you don't expect. Like, every big artist or big actor has talked about it at some point, about how they don't really feel they should be where they are.
Yeah.
Even when they've been there for so long. And I think it's really, and maybe it's because of Tom directing, or, you know, and just having the right people around you there. You guys really had to, it's scary. Like, you really had to open up, because you're used to being, you know, you say you don't like being on stage, but you play the role, you go on stage, you'll be the front man, you do your music thing because you love the music. But how was it just to be that open on film that, you know, other people will see?
Yeah, I guess that was another really interesting challenge. Like, I remember just before, I can't remember when it was, a point where it was legal, where basically we were sitting around my kitchen table. So it must have been pre-lockdown.
Isn't it mad that, like, now we're like, when was it last year that those
yeah,
you could actually sit with one other person?
Yeah, I know.
How many people were there? Was there 5? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, but what was it? It didn't feel stressful at the time, so I don't think it was illegal. Yeah, I remember we sort of sat around my kitchen table with Tom, with Toby, and with Josh, who produced it, and our managers, and they basically put it to me and to all of us that like the only way for this to be interesting was for us to be less guarded than we normally are. Because I think, you know, we're lucky enough to make music and for it to be our job, and obviously a bunch of that is quite public. But for me personally, like, I love writing songs, but any kind of like personal representation stuff always feels a bit uncomfortable for me. And I guess just it was interesting, hearing them out and basically hearing them say, this will only be relatable if you are more honest about the things that I know you feel but you don't often talk about in public. And you know, he was like, because to be honest, moderately successful band do a nice gig with some classical musicians and it goes well is not an interesting story, mate. So you've got to open up a bit. So you know, and I think we all took that on board. And I think what they did really cleverly was kind of divide and conquer. We all did the interviews separately and we didn't speak to each other about it until we saw the film. So it was amazing. Like Kyle, who, you know, I live on a bus with Kyle half my life. You know, he sleeps in a little coffin bunk above me or below me, and we're 2 feet away from each other. Like, you know, I spent so much of my life going to sleep we hear each other's snoring, smell each other's farts, like, you know, whatever the weirdness of being on a bus with someone. But he was saying things in this film that I'd never heard before, and I'd never heard him articulate. And I'm sure the same goes for me as well. Like, so I think it was kind of an interesting experiment in sort of encouraging people to say the things they really feel and be really honest, and then, you know, nicely editing it all together so that we could see it and so that the rest of the world could see it too. But yeah, I think we've always been quite private people and not maybe spoken as openly as we could have about the experience and what it's been like. Because I think to a certain point, we just feel so grateful and so surprised to still be in the position that we're in, that, you know, I think you sometimes don't want to be too honest and let on that things are maybe harder than they seem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of a risk, but I think definitely making it partly with a friend and with a kind of with a really nice set of people did help. But I hope that in talking about it, it's not only kind of interesting for some people in seeing a more 3D rounded perspective on what people are going through, no matter what their job is, but also maybe for people who ever have felt in whatever they do in life have felt like an imposter or felt not good enough, that that hopefully maybe you are, maybe you're not, who knows.
I think it's hugely helpful, and it will resonate with people even outside the music landscape. And we all kind of judge people. If you're a front man of a band, you kind of think, you even think of like the bravado of the Mick Jaggers, or they need to be cocky, need to be confident. And I've seen you on stage and you're confident, or appear to be confident, and you stand up on things. And it's crazy because even like watching this, I'm like, I had no idea you hated being on stage because you do it so well.
So many people have said that. So many people have said that to me. And I think, I mean, that's the thing about my friends who, whenever they come to our shows, and I generally come off stage in some sort of like level of self-loathing, and one of our in-ear monitor guy, Ben, who's like such a close friend, I work with him every night, and he's like, why did you do it to yourself? Because I don't know, I almost can't quite believe that people are watching, because in my head it feels so weird and stressful. It's interesting to me that it comes across so differently.
No one
people
would
are
have a clue.
You look like you were having a great time. I'm like, I wasn't.
It just goes to show you, though, like that's a good learning curve for like when you watch someone and you think they're in a good place, you think they're we don't know what's going on in someone's head ever. Exactly.
That's the thing, if and it's weird to talk about it, because I think I don't want to seem ungrateful, and I don't want it to seem like, being on tour, getting to play shows to people is like insane, like such a privilege. It's such a privilege to get to do this as our job. Such a privilege to get to travel the world and play shows, and know that we have fans who've parted with their hard-earned money and put aside an evening of their life to come and see us. So like, that's a reason to do it, and that is amazing. And obviously there are moments of people singing along to songs that you wrote in your bedroom a few years ago. Like, it is amazing and it is profound, but equally, you don't ever know what's going on in someone's head, and it's often quite a stressful experience for me. But I wish it wasn't. Like, I looked at people who've like dreamt of doing that all their lives, or like just feed off the energy of a crowd. And I was like, oh God, I wish that was me. But you can't really change who you are.
Do you feel like it's brought you guys closer together as a band?
Ironically, but at a time where we can't see each other.
Can't see each other.
So yeah, I feel like I know more. I feel like I have a kind of a deeper insight into the workings of their mind. But it's interesting with Kyle, for example. He talks about, there was a point really early on with our band where our manager basically was like, he's not good enough, and sort of almost encouraged us to sit him down and say, dude, you've got to kind of up your game a little bit musically. And I certainly don't feel like a good enough musician to say that to anyone ever, but it was a difficult conversation. And I didn't expect him to talk about that in the film, but he did, and that's obviously something that's kind of echoed through his experience of the last 8 years, and was massively exacerbated by then being put on stage with virtuosically highly trained classical musicians, and so I guess it forced him to confront that quite a lot. And I always knew that he worked a bit harder than everyone else, but I never realized it was quite as significant in his head and as intense. And I'm sure the guys watching me back, talk about like being a larger like teenager, or like the sort of imposter syndrome or stage fright, or all of the things that we kind of discuss. I'm sure they maybe weren't aware of things, but like you said, you never know what people are thinking or what they're going through unless you ask.
I am Laura Whitmore on BBC 5 Live. My Under the Spotlight guest is the frontman of best-selling band Bastille, Dan Smith. I want to take you back to where this love of music came from. Do you remember the first time that you played the piano, or the first time that music entered your life, I suppose, in any way, that you thought that this is something bigger than just a little hobby?
Well, yeah, it's weird for me. I used to play music. My mum never did music professionally, but she always she paid her way through university playing folk songs. Their mum and dad are from South Africa, but she used to that's kind of how she paid her way through uni. So music, and her music was always kind of part of like the sound of our house. And yeah, I guess I always played songs, but I just never thought it would be something I'd do in public. It was something I did for myself. And it wasn't until I went to university that some friends of mine in some bands like basically heard my stuff and very aggressively encouraged me to to start playing shows and stuff like that. So it's at the time it felt weird and unnatural for me to be on stage, and it still kind of does, but that's sort of where really I think music wise as a kid, like I remember being really obsessed with a very like basically Bridge Over Troubled Waters, the Simon and Garfunkel album, but also like Lauryn Hill's Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and the Fugees album, the score.
Very different, yeah.
But like I just like, so those were like when I was a kid, those were my obsessions. I think I was just listening to, there was like one of them was a Parents album and one of them was like my older sister's album, but like but Lauryn Hill for me, just her kind of honesty and the diversity in what she does, and the work that she did with the Fugees, and then kind of how rawly and openly she documents like her life and the fallout of the Fugees in Miseducation, or I always found like incredible and inspiring. And then also people like Anthony and the Johnsons and Regina Spektor. I think because I play piano and I have a weird sounding voice, I was always drawn to people who played piano and had weird sounding voices.
I want to talk, Dan, about last year because you released the Goosebumps EP. I did two amazing collaborations, one with Kenny Beats and another with Graham Coxon, the legendary Blur guitarist. How did those collaborations happen? How do collaborations happen? Does it come from like friendships or the label or you guys or? Yeah,
it's always a mix. I mean, we've done a bunch of mixtapes over the years, and I guess when it comes to our albums, we never collaborate. Like I write everything, me and the band and Mark, our producer, we record it all, and I co-produce it with Mark. And we've always been kind of control freaks about that. We've never wanted to collaborate with producers or other writers or anything like that. But the mixtapes have been a space where we've done 4. We've done mad, weird covers of like Rhythm of the Night and No Scrubs, imagining that Norman Bates is a scrub because he lives at home with his mum, and like from Psycho, and but also there's one mixtape we had Haim on there, and we had Lizzo on there, and we had Rag and Bone Man, and we had Kate Tempest. So the mixtapes for us are this space where we get to be really collaborative and almost be the opposite of who we are on our albums, and that's always been like a really fun parallel lane for us. And I guess going into last year, finishing our 3rd album, finishing those ReOrchestrated shows, I wanted to challenge us, as a band that's been around for like 8, nearly 10 years, to just kind of rip up our process and start again, and just basically for me to just chill out a bit and share the load. And so some collaborations, like come really naturally from people that you hang out with at festivals or meet on tour or whatever. And others, people you reach out to online. So Kenny Beats, like I'm a really big fan of his. He's amazing. And when I was last in LA, sort of beginning of last year, went to his studio and played him a bunch of music. And to me, he's this like really cool hip hop producer who does loads of like amazing pitchforky music that feels like a different world and way too cool for. But we had such a good time. We ended up hanging out again in London. He came to our studio and we played him Goosebumps, and he just loved it and immediately started making the beat for that. And I just loved the idea that we could put out an EP that has a song with him and then a song with Graham Coxon, who's this like guitar legend from like from Blur, who are like one of my all-time favorite bands. With him, we sent him the song, and I definitely, when we were making it, I was thinking like I want this song to be like our song too, like Bastille's song too. I want it to hit you around the head when you're least expecting it, and take your head off a bit, and kind of be a sort of sarcastic snarl of a song. So there was an element of me being like, oh, we're sort of ripping him off. Shall I just send it to him and see? And I was half expecting him to kind of ignore it or throw it back, but he loved the song and immediately started sending stuff. But it was a real lockdown collaboration, that one, because we were never in the same studio. And that's ironic because it feels like the most like old school band song that we've done in a while, so it's weird to never actually get in a room with him. He was lovely. He did the guitars, sent loads of guitars through, and then I was like, I wonder if I could push it a bit further and see if he'll sing on it too. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll have a go.
Of course you can.
So he sang on it too. So I was just somehow managed to duet on a song with Graham Coxon, who like is just one of the most amazing, talented people in the world. So that was it really. And I think with the whole EP, it was about like, it's just, I just want to like constantly shake people's expectations of who they think we are. Like most people, if they've heard of us, will have only heard 1 or 2 songs, and they'll, as is natural, you'll set your expectations from that. But I think because we're always hoping to and trying to push to be a bit different and a bit stranger and more left and weird and do different things, I'm always just keen to show people.
Is it frustrating when people put you in a box that way, because they'll be like, oh, it's an indie band, or this is what they do, or they'll know Pompeii, and which is an amazing song, but then they just know that and not know this other side?
Yeah, I guess it's been something that we've kind of always had it, and it sort of comes up in the documentary as well. They're like, it was a very DIY bedroom project, this band, and it's always been kind of genreless. Like Pompeii is this big kind of indie song, but it also didn't really sound like anything else at the time.
No.
But then there's other stuff.
But
on
you're
our
also
first album
guys in a band. You're also like attractive boys in a band.
Yeah,
Let's put them in
we
that.
look like
Yeah,
exactly.
you look like you're in.
We're like 4 white guys who are in a band and play traditional instruments. So like obviously it fits that trope. And I think probably a part of me who's never really identified with that as what we are, but we were always sort of lumped as that. And I remember at the beginning, like I remember speaking to some journalists who were like, well, "What are you? Are you a boy band? Are you an indie band? Like, what are you?" And I was like, I actually didn't have the language at the time to say it, but I was like, I don't know, and I don't really care. Like, and it's just really great that music has moved on now to a point where being a certain thing doesn't make you. Things have all kind of like
in. You're Bastille. That's what you are.
Exactly. Individuality is a thing now, and like all genres have kind of melted away and blended into each other, and it's a big kind of mixing pot now of so many different things. And everybody now listens to everything. It's not like it used to be quite tribal, and people would like only listen to rock or only listen to hip hop or whatever. And I think that just doesn't exist anymore, and it's brilliant. And music is more interesting for it, and that's the only way that people are going to be able to like innovate and do new stuff. So for us, it was always really important. I think it's been something in my head that I've always like railed against, and that's why when we started out, we were 4 guys in a band, but I loved The Weeknd and I loved Frank Ocean and I loved them putting up music online like mixtapes for free, and so that's what I wanted to emulate, and that's where my head was at.
Congratulations again on ReOrchestrated. It is out now on Amazon Prime, and it is great viewing, and wishing you all the success, and I can't wait to see you guys live because you're a great live band.
Thank you.
And it's just really excited about the next projects that you have coming up, because I know you'll constantly surprise us.
I hope so. Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to see you again.